We all have our preconceived notions about what to throw in various water clarities. Now, I'm not talking about color. As a general rule, you want to throw darker colors in dirtier water, more natural looking colors in cleaner water. But I'm talking about actual bait types. For instance, I've got a ton of confidence throwing jerkbaits in clear water in certain situations, but I don't have any confidence throwing a jerkbait in dirty water. So to test out some of my hypotheses about what to throw in what clarity water, I've come to my neighborhood boat launch, which is off of a river here in South Louisiana. And the water clarity today, it's okay. It's very, very tannic. The water here always is, but I'd say this water clarity is slightly above average. Maybe a 6 out of 10. So this is going to be a good test to see how various baits look underwater and whether certain ones are more visible than others in water this clarity. Now, I'm not going to be paying attention to color today. That's not as important to me. I've already done an underwater test with various colors in stained water. If you haven't seen that, I'll link to it here. This is more a test of bait groups and how they might appear to fish in water that is about a 6 out of 10. Now, I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to set this all up yet, but as you can see, I've got all my tackle options as well as my traffic cones. If you've seen previous pool tests, you know I like to mount a GoPro to the top of those, and then I lower it with the push pole. Real high-tech operation here. So I'm going to try and figure out the setup here and get this rolling. I'm really curious to see how these baits look underwater. Alright, so I got the setup chore completely done, and now it's time to begin the actual testing. So first up is a tandem Colorado willow leaf spinnerbait made by a buddy of mine named Jeff Brule. Now obviously I know that different spinnerbaits put off different vibrations. Obviously Colorado blades are generally thought to be better in dirtier water, etc. Not going to test every type of blade, but I just want to see in general how spinnerbaits look in stained water. Let's see. Alright, I've got a few of these in succession, but one thing that really jumped out to me was the sound these blades make. Now let's slow it down and get a good look at the actual spinnerbait. As you'd expect, it looks really good in stained water. Alright, next we're going to take a look at a jerkbait. Now I forgot to mention, as a general rule, I'm trying to keep every lure about 18 inches away from that camera, just so we can kind of compare apples and apples. Alright, this thing makes more racket than a room full of 3-year-old boys with a drum set. But as you can see, the visibility isn't quite the best. Definitely not as good as a spinnerbait. This episode of Marshman Masson brought to you by Prettiest Sporting Goods. Alright, next we're going to try a crankbait. This is one I've been having a lot of success with lately. It's an Echo 1.75 made by Bill Lewis. Really like this bait. Let's see how it looks underwater. Alright, also a deafening roar with this thing. And maybe because of the stockier profile, it seems to show up a little bit better than the jerkbait. Alright, next up, the always popular Rattletrap. Let's see how it looks underwater. Alright, surprisingly, the Rattletrap isn't quite as loud as the crankbait or jerkbait, but it does show up pretty well. Alright, next up is a Fluke style bait. This one's actually a pro's choice. I get these really cheap from sportsmansoutfitters.com. And unlike the Zoom product, they're scented. Alright, now obviously there's no sound with this bait, but it looks better in stained water than I expected. Alright, next up is a jig-and-trailer. Now, I had to make a slight adjustment to the camera just so I could ensure that I was getting the baits in front of the camera. I tilted it downward so you can see the base of the traffic cone. So these are going to be a little bit closer to the camera than those other baits were, but it'll still give us a good idea of how they look underwater in this stained water. Alright, so jigs are slow-moving, bulky baits So in general, they're good in stained water, particularly for big fish. And you can see that this one shows up pretty well. All right, next up is a craw style bait. This one just happens to be a matrix craw. Let's see how he looks underwater. Though not as bulky as the jig, this is another lure that looks really good in this water clarity. Certainly something you'd want to consider throwing in stained water. All right, of course we got to look at a worm. Now, just like spinnerbaits, there's a ton of different styles and combinations that people fish, but probably the most popular is a rip and tail, so that's what we're going to take a look at. All right, another slow mover that's a more subtle presentation. Definitely looks good in this water clarity. All right, no test like this would be complete without looking at a topwater bait. So I've got just a standard popper. I've got the camera pointed up, looking right at the surface. So let's see how it looks. All right, I've got to pause this right here just to say, is that not the coolest angle you've ever seen? It looks like it was cut out of an old Western. This is really awesome to see a topwater bait from a bass eye view. Man, I love these underwater tests. I always learn so much from them. Now, I know that a fish's vision is not exactly the same as a human's, and obviously fish have lateral lines to help them sense the location of bait fish, and we don't have those. But these tests help me to have confidence in certain styles of lures in different water clarities, and this one definitely taught me a lot. Well, all right, if you enjoyed the video and got something out of it, please give it a thumbs up. Also, subscribe to the Marshman Masson channel on YouTube. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. And until next time, if we don't see you in the marsh, we'll see you right here on Marshman Masson. This episode of Marshman Masson brought to you by Matrix Shad, and by Fitzgerald Fishing, and by Cito New Orleans, and by Versamax Corks, and by Death Grip Jig Heads.